Hey guys, I wanted to take a look at Investigation 10 with you just to kind of go over some things. Obviously, read everything. I want to use the investigations as a way for you to be in charge of your own learning a little bit. If we were here in class, you would be doing this all on your own with a partner. At home, you don't necessarily have your partner that you can work with. So let's take a look at this spinner up here in the corner. So, probability is what is the probability that it will land on a certain thing, okay? So, on this spinner, if I spun it, we're trying to figure out what is the probability for each thing. So, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a list of all of my options, okay? So, I see I can do, it could land on an A, it could land on a B, or a C. So, if I made a list, it would be A, B, C. Now, when you're talking probability, you're always talking fractions. Fractions, fractions, fractions. So if it said, what is the probability that it would land on an A of my circle, I have to write a fraction of how many of those pieces are A, okay? So I can count up, and I know that 3 of them are A out of 6 total pieces. So the probability that it will land on A is 3/6, which is the same thing as a half. Okay, so half of the time, technically, if I spun this, half of the time it should land on A. That might not always happen. Probability is weird that way, is where that's what should happen. That's what the numbers are saying is most likely to happen. But that's not necessarily what's actually going to happen. If you think about a dice, if you roll a dice over and over and over again, it's the same chance that it could land on any of the numbers on a dice. But it's not going to roll a 1 and then a 2 and then a 3 and be fair. Probability doesn't have to be fair. So if we look at B, I have 2 options for B, and I'm going to write it on this side since there's a glare. Okay, so 2 of my spaces are B out of, there's still 6 spaces. Okay, so 2/6 of them would be B, which is the same thing as 1/3. So if I were to spin it, technically 1/3 of my time, so half of it's taken up by A, the other third is going to be taken up by B, so that should be the next most likely thing that's going to happen. And then C is 1/6 of the time. So C is technically the least likely one to happen, but it could be the one that occurs most often. Like I said, probability is weird in the way that things should happen, but they don't necessarily have to happen that way. So, this is all in your book. So if you go to the activity in our book, and I'm just going to keep scrolling here. Okay, it starts on the first page. It says you need lesson activity 47. And so what that is, it's just a piece of paper. Looks like this. Okay. It has the same charts that are in your book. So I'm going to give you one of these in your pickup packet. And if you don't have one, you can just copy the chart from your book. It's no problem. So on here, you're talking about dot cubes. And what they mean by dot cubes is dice. Hopefully you guys have dice at home. If you don't, I know if you go online, you can find some virtual dice rollers. If you have the game Trouble, you can pop the middle and do that, but I know that always does it have 1 dice or 2 dice? Eventually, we'll need to have 2 dice because you're going to predict how many times out of 36 rolls it's going to land on each number. So you'd write that in your prediction. So I could say, I think out of 36 rolls, it's going to do 6 times each, right? Because 6 times 6 is 36. So if I said, all right, I think it's going to be even. 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. I'd write that here. Now I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to roll it. I'm going to tally. Okay, I got a 1 this time, so I would put a tally here. I got a 4 this time, and then a 6, and I would do 36. So technically, this should all add up to 36. And then the total frequency would be the fraction. So if I ended up getting 4 1s rolled, my total frequency would be 4. It's going to be a fraction out of 36. Okay, so that's with just 1 dice. Now with 2, if I scroll down, even more, there's going to be another chart, and you're going to do the same experiment, except this time it's going to have 2 dice. Okay, so obviously 1 is not on there. There's no possible way to roll 2 dice and only have 1 dot show because there's not a 0 on a dice. Okay, so you're going to predict how many times is 2 going to get rolled. Okay, remember, all of your predictions should still only equal 36 because you're only going to do it 36 times. And then you're actually going to do it. Now you're going to roll 2 dice and tally up how many happens. Same thing with the total frequency. Okay? Remember, you'll have that chart, that piece of paper, lesson activity 47. If you don't have it, you can copy this chart down from your book. Not a big deal if you don't have it and you end up writing it down. But you will be using this chart on both of those activities to answer the questions. Okay? Which outcomes occurred most frequently, least frequently? Okay? There is one that you do not have to do, and it's in the first activity. And it's right here. Make a bar graph using the data from your table. You don't have to do this. If you want to do it, great, but you don't have to do this one, okay? Takes a little bit off of your plate because remember you're doing all of them from your investigation. And remember that could be more than 30. I'm not really sure how many is on this one. Let's take a look. If I were to answer all of my questions on this one, it only goes to 25, okay? So you will have space on your page if you wanted to do a bar graph, but like I said, you do not have to, okay? All right, y'all have a good night.